Most ad tutorials are just clicking around in the ad manager and not breaking down the tactics behind winning ads and campaigns. In this video, I'm taking you through my entire YouTube ads process, starting with auditing your ad account and ending with how to scale to thousands in spend per day. The first thing you want to do is this before any research or scripting. Hop into the ad account and make sure that you have these specific metrics toggled. Average CPM, impressions, clicks, click-through rate, average cost per click, the video played to a certain percentage, the actual cost that you've spent on the ads, the conversions, and then the cost per conversions as well. And if you want to have the campaign ID as well. These are necessary metrics for YouTube ads specifically. And the reason I'm saying this is if you've already run YouTube ads and you don't have these metrics enabled, you might actually be having campaigns that are winning that you don't even really know about because you need to track your data. Once all of these settings are enabled, you want to sort the campaigns. Let's say you have multiple of them by cost, because the cost is going to tell you which metrics are the most accurate. The more you spend, the more accurate of a representation the law of averages has to work out your numbers. So, as you can see here, look at this campaign right here. This campaign spent $145, 0 conversions. But in this campaign, there's an average cost per conversion of $70. If we waited till a campaign spent $70 and said, oh, we don't have any conversions, and then we paused it, you don't even know if the campaign works or not. Comparative to this, which has over $1,500 in spend, and we have almost 24 conversions here, and a cost of under $70 per lead. And the only way we knew this is because we spent enough. So go into your campaigns and look at the metrics in your campaigns. Now, I'm not saying that if you have a cheap cost per lead, that's going to indicate your campaign is automatically a winner. This is obviously not the case when you're running certain platforms, you're running certain ads, and you're running certain campaign types. But it's a general rule of thumb to be able to tell you if, hey, this campaign is probably working comparative to ones that are spending, under, let's just see here, under, look, $11. That's not enough. Diving into what I said a little bit earlier, let's look at these two campaigns right next to each other, the top two. They spend almost identical in amounts of money, but the results are almost completely different. The first campaign produced a cost per lead of almost half of what campaign 2 produced. And obviously, like I said before, cost per lead isn't the only indicator of whether a campaign's working. Really what matters is your cost per contract, cost per closed deal, your LTV to CAC ratio. Those are much more important. But in this campaign, the only difference was the targeting. The creative was the same. The landing page was the same. Everything else was the same. So this campaign is indicating to me that this specific one, campaign number 2 here's targeting, is not as efficient as campaign 1. And we ran the exact same creative. Now, when you know this, then you can say, okay, well, this targeting type works better for this specific market. Therefore, what are you going to do? Well, we are going to either spend more on campaign 1 or create different variations of ads with the exact same targeting type as campaign 1. And this is the first step when it comes to running profitable ads. Now, obviously, the next thing you want to do is check out which campaigns produce the most result. So if we go into here and we see, obviously, campaign hook number 5 here produced way more results. Now, obviously, we spent a lot more, but we determined after enough spend that hook number 5 produced significantly better results overall comparative to all of these different other ads. And so why did it work? We have to see. Most of the time, it comes down to probably the hook. And if the hook's good, then how can we create different ads off of this good hook? Or can we create hooks that are adjacent to this specific ad? The point is, you want to always refine the winners, and you need to be tracking the data properly in order to determine what the winners actually are. So once you've got the ad account set up properly, you have all the correct metrics labeled, you saw how the metrics mattered in determining the success of an ad, and the next step, now we can move into the research and the scripting of the ads. The first thing I would do is research. And the fastest way you can get research is just pulling own data from your own clients or your own sales calls. If you are efficient, you're going to have an AI recording or a note taker during your meetings. And if you have this, this is the best way to find out what to talk about in your ads. Pull the last 20 to 30 calls, see what the objections were, see what the pains were, see what the life situations were. And from there, you can determine how you're going to create your ads because you actually have real sellers in your market giving you live feedback and information. One thing I like to always say is their actual words can become your hooks verbatim. Now, if you don't have call recordings or you have very few or minimal, the next thing I would do is jump onto Google and search competitor companies that are also doing your service. So We Buy Houses companies, etc., and read the reviews. And the first thing I want to say is read the reviews that are negative because negative reviews tend to have a higher impact and resonate better and capture more attention than positive feedback. Obviously, positive feedback matters for your reputation, your brand, building trust. But calling out an ideal client situation with other competitors is even more captivating, especially in the beginning of an ad. And besides Google reviews, you can also hop on Quora, you can hop on Reddit, and read the forums on these pages on what real people are actively saying in your market right now. And if you can find that information, those types of pain points, objections, this is the best thing to use in your hooks because it's real people talking about real problems right now. Now, recurrent themes you're probably going to see on these sites is, fear of being lowballed, maybe being scammed, having to walk through the property, embarrassment of the condition. And these are the things you want to look for. These are pain-related points that people are experiencing, and you need to be able to handle these properly and provide a compassionate and also an effective solution to these specific pain points. So, for example, let's say 90% of your market have objections of being lowballed by every other company that you know. And then you come in and you say, hey, we're going to get you the best price for your home on your ad. Let's say you speak to your ideal customer like that. But every other company that's lowballed them has also said that they're not going to want to choose you as the company. You're not going to stand out, and you're most certainly not going to work in scaling your ads. Whereas if you say, look, we hear every single company saying X, Y, and Z. This is how we handle the situation. The chance of you using that as your hook and actually getting a 20, 50, 70% higher engagement rate is almost certain. Because if you're resonating with the pain points of your market, you have some sort of solution and your brand has the reputation to back that solution to that specific pain point up. This is how you build and scale your business properly. And another thing you can do when researching your competitors is you can use Google Ads Transparency Center. So literally just type that in, Google Transparency Center. I can't spell right now, but here we go. You hop on here, and let's say you have a specific company you want to work with, because I don't have one off the top of my head right now. Let's just say, We Buy Houses in Hotlanta. I'm going to assume that's Atlanta. Yep. Let's say you're in the Atlanta market, and this is a direct competitor of yours, and you want to see what they're doing that's working. You can click on video. Now, unfortunately, this specific company is not running YouTube ads, but if they are running YouTube ads, you can just go in and you can check out their specific videos. And the key here that I want to mention is that it's not about stealing people's ads. It's about noticing the themes that are working and emulating those. So a theme, for example, would be, let's say they were to go to a very famous monument, like, in Atlanta, whatever famous building there is in Atlanta, they go right outside of that building and they record there. And that might be the winning reason. Maybe they're using UGC format, meaning they're recording on their phone or they're recording in their car, and they have a natural setup and natural lighting instead of a whole cinematic photography session. Maybe that's what's winning. The point is, that's a theme, not taking the words verbatim, getting the same actor or, wearing the same thing and, being in the exact same location, saying the same exact script at the same time of day. It's not stealing the ad, but rather taking the themes. And then you can use your own unique spin to differentiate yourself. Not only is stealing just not really, I would say ethical. We can talk about that another day. But more importantly, you need to differentiate yourself. And that's what's going to scale your ads. You're only going to be as good as your competitor if you do exactly as what your competitor does. So stand out. Now, while we're on the topic of scripting, one of the highest leverage things you can do is figuring out how to actually sculpt and script your ads. Now, differentiation matters. But if you don't know how to actually write a script, none of it matters. And it all comes down to one thing: your messaging. What do I mean by messaging? It means, can you resonate with your ICP? Or if you have multiple different buckets of people, can you create ads that specifically call out and resonate with those specific people optimally? So, what does that mean tangibly? What you need to understand is that there are 5 stages of awareness when it comes to a marketing funnel. There is completely unaware, there is problem aware, solution aware, product aware, and most aware. At the top of completely unaware, this is going to be the seller who might not even know that they're going to be selling their property. They might be going through a divorce and all they're thinking about is a divorce. Problem aware is through the process of being in a divorce, or maybe the end process, they think of the logistics and what's going to have to happen with the house, moving out, maybe moving separate, moving to apartments. This is problem aware. Then solution aware happens when they actually start typing in, selling my house, I'm going through a divorce, how do I get cash for my house? And I could talk about all the different stages, but the point here is that different stages require different messaging. You're not going to talk about, these solutions to selling to someone who is barely aware of the problem that they're going through. So if someone's going through the divorce and they're in the middle of a divorce, and that's the majority of your market, you're not going to make an ad based on, these are the solutions to what to do when you're in a divorce or how to sell your house properly. You need to make them aware that being in a divorce means that they're going to need to sell their property for cash if, they want to be out of the house and they want to be out in a timeline that's, let's say, under 14 days. They can't stand being around each other. That needs to be emphasized over, hey, this is how we sell homes. This is the process we go through. They aren't even in the mental capacity to be able to understand and really effectively digest that information comparative to you addressing the problem that they're in. Once you have ads that target that specific problem, then you can introduce how to solve those problems. You can even do that later in the ad depending on the type of campaign you're running. But the point is you need to emphasize the messaging based around the type of person you're in or the type of awareness level your prospect is in. Now, when I audit 90% or higher of underperforming real estate investment accounts, I typically notice the same structure. They have one ad, one offer in one campaign running for 3 to 6 months straight, and it started to decline rapidly. And they wonder why they're not getting results. And the answer is simple. You aren't testing enough variables. You constantly need to test different variables in ad accounts, especially when an ad is not winning. And if an ad is winning, you need to create variations of that ad. And this comes down to ad fatigue. Creative fatigue is when a campaign or an ad decreases in its performance over time. And the fatigue happens due to a variation of different reasons. This could be because people have seen the ad too many times. This could be because the offer is not as compelling as it once was 3 to 6 months ago. And you need to be able to identify these things so that you can make the changes. This doesn't mean you need to know every single variable because that's simply impossible, but you need to have the capacity to put out different variations so that you can be on top of it, so that the feedback loop of you creating more ads shortens. Because if your time frame in which you're able to create more variations shortens, meaning you can do it faster, you're going to outwork your competitors by orders of magnitude of 10, 20, and you're going to be the top selling person in your market because you're able to be ahead of the curve. Even if you don't know what works, you're able to have those variations ready so that when you figure out what's working, everything else can be paused and you can scale that specific ad or create more variations of the same. So what does this look like tactically? Well, let's say, for example, you have a winning ad and it was really good. It was shot horizontally in a home. Maybe you're the founder recording it. One variation that you can do is record a UGC ad with an actor or an actress of someone who's your ideal client. So, let's say it's an older woman, dressed in a specific way that resembles your ICP so that it can resonate with your target ideal client. That's an example. You can also change it up. Maybe the hook performed really well, and now it's time to switch up the body and switch up how you guys lay out what your service does and how it provides and solves certain problems. Things like case studies, things like walkthroughs, all of these different variations are ways you can change your ad, and you don't have to change anything necessarily even about the script. You can just change the setting, or you could keep the setting and change the script. It's not about coming up with an entirely different idea that's totally alien and foreign to what you already had. It's about building off of what already works so that you can prevent creative fatigue and so that you can scale your ads constantly. And again, feedback loops, are shorter, and the amount of time that you're beating your competitors is orders of magnitudes higher. So, to keep it short, when you're starting out, run an ad group with 3 to 5 ads with 3 to 5 different hooks, 2 different bodies, all in one, or maybe multiple different campaigns with different ad groups. This is the simplest way. You can test it out, see which ones are working. This way you have enough variation to start so that all your spend doesn't burn out in one ad. And then once you figure out of the 5 or maybe even 10 ads that you're running, hey, hook 2 and hook 4 are working really, really well, and the rest were kind of underperforming under KPI. Pause everything else, scale the spend maybe by 50% on those 2 ads, and then with the other 50% of your budget, create variations of those ads, maybe different settings, different scripts. And this is how you can infinitely scale using the same exact or similar concepts to what you previously had. Now, when it comes to running ads, really quick, I just want to show you what the actual setup looks like. So you're going to go into the ads manager. You should know how to do this. Create a new campaign. And once you get in here, you want to choose leads. Make sure that you have your conversion tracking set up. We go over that in a different video. And then choose video, continue. And just some quick tips when it comes to running ads. The first thing you want to do is just click set specific targeting for devices and turn off TV screens. This is one of the most important things you can do. Typically, TV screens just simply don't convert nearly as much as computers and mobile phones do. And tablets do sometimes convert. I've seen like up to 3x ROI using tablets, so you can just leave it on. If you really want to leave it off, you could make a fair case for it, but I just leave it on just in case. It doesn't make that much of a difference. Other than that, you want to set the location to be campaign location and language settings. The presence is people in or regularly in your included location, and then choose your market. So if you're in Spokane, Washington, there you go. Save it there. For the ad group, this is the second thing you want to choose. So you want to turn off every other single channel except YouTube in-stream. That's it. Start with YouTube in-stream. You can test the other variables once you start having winners. But to start out, YouTube in-stream has produced me and my dozens of other clients the highest ROI comparative to any other platform. So just choose that. A non-negotiable comes down to understanding your market. If you have a relatively large market size, 1 million plus, you can get more granular with your targeting. So when you go into here and you choose an audience, you can choose and create an audience of custom segments that are, sell my home fast. You can do solution-aware based ads because you have a demographic large enough where there's enough people searching these things and the algorithm can learn fast enough for you to actually get results. If you have a small market of 300,000, you can even get away with that. But I'm just going to say, to play it safe, 300,000 or less, typically what I see is running ads like this with specific solution-aware stuff, especially with like specific keywords. Like, for example, foreclosure, forget it. It is going to be extremely difficult to scale profitable ads this way, comparative to if you just use things like in-market segments, which is a much broader targeting segment. So for this, Cash for Homes is a great way to have a balance of broad and also strict targeting when it comes to your specific area. Like I said, with this area, because it has 1.5 million people, this isn't necessary and you can get granular. If your market is very small, I would typically recommend doing something like interest and detailed demographics. And a quick little secret, just doing Cash for Homes is a great way to start for your targeting, to keep it really simple. If you don't want to think too much about the targeting end of things, this is a great way to start. It's not perfect, but it's what I would do if I was running a brand new account with a relatively small market and I wanted to get as many leads in as possible to collect as much data. The next thing is optimized targeting. This one's a trip, because there have been campaigns that I've actually ran with optimized targeting as the primary targeting type without an audience, and it's actually outperformed others. Generally, I see disabling optimized targeting and using audience targeting and using, custom segment targeting with the keywords like I showed you before, or in-market audiences, as a higher ROI producing asset comparative to optimized targeting. But with that being said, if I was to give you advice to just start off, I would leave it off and I would add an audience to start. But if you want to try it for whatever reason, I'm not opposed as I used to be to optimized targeting as much as I was, in the past where it completely shattered results. So this one is a trip, but like I said, to keep it simple, go to audience, choose an in-market audience if you're not sure, and then go from there. Now, going over what I said before, cost per lead, that is important, but what really matters at the end of the day when you're tracking your metrics is how many people are watching my videos? What's my click-through rate or what's my average cost per click? And at the end of the day, what's my cost per contract and cost per close deal? That matters way more than worrying about the cost per lead. Because, for example, if you have a cost per lead of $200, but you're closing 1 out of every 7, or let's say every 5 leads, then you have $1,000 cost per closed deal or contract. And that's extremely healthy, especially when average order values or the average profit per deal is anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 typically in lower markets. And other markets, you can have up to $50,000 to $100,000 per deal. That's way better. And people are like, oh, $200 cost per lead is on the fence of not really that good. And it's like, sure, maybe if, it takes 40 deals to contract, yes, comparatively or relatively, that cost per lead is not good. But you want to be looking at these metrics too. Like how many people are watching at least the hook? Okay, well, we're seeing, above 30% watching 25% of the video. Typically, a video is a minute long, and 25% of a minute, we're looking at about 15 seconds-ish. That means we've already gotten past the hook. So if you have above 30% for the hook, your ad's performing well. And then typically the drop-off rate is, it tapers off relative to, like an exponential graph, for example. This is much easier to read. It goes from like 35 to 22%, and then it only drops off to like 15%. Watch the entirety of the video. This is a healthy metric. If you're seeing like, under 20%, I was going to say 25, but typically under 20%, conservatively, the ad is probably not performing well. This click-through rate is actually pretty low. Typically, I see click-through rates, around 0.9 to 1%. But for this particular campaign, this actually produced 2 deals. And we got an insane, ROI on this kind of stuff. But in the end, essentially, you want to be looking at, are people actually watching the video and what's my cost per contract? Now, if your videos aren't performing well, the tactical explanation would be that you need to change the hook. If people are watching your video, they're clicking it and, they're not converting, then maybe there's something on the landing page, or it could be a messaging issue. If people are converting, but the leads are garbage, it might be an offer issue. So every step of the process has an explanation as to why it's not working. And you need to be able to diagnose where in the pipeline it's not working so that you can make educated and non-emotional based decisions in order to change it. And the only way you can do that is tracking your data properly. If you don't have these metrics, you won't even know where to start. So track them properly. And then from there, this is how you optimize your campaigns. This is how you scale. And this is how you run a profitably and healthy real estate investment business. If this video got you at all interested on how to start or scale your YouTube ad campaigns, click the link below this video. There's some more info on how I help real estate investors scale their businesses with YouTube ads. Aside from that, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.